The voice of the city.
98FM's Dublin Talks.
With Adrian Kennedy.
We're live every morning from 10 on 98FM.
Joseph, you're a former prison officer in the States.
That's correct, Adrian, yeah.
What sort of a prison were you working in?
Well, I worked in a federal prison for a number of years, and then when I left that, I got employed in a youth boot camp.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, which is something they do over there.
Yeah, well, I think it's something that they should do here, because, to be honest with you, the courts here are too soft on them. They're laughing at the courts.
So tell me how a boot camp operated. This was for juvenile offenders, I assume.
Correct. The youngest juvenile offender that we had in there was 9.
9?
Up to the age of 18.
9,
yeah.
Okay, 9 to 18.
Yeah. They come in, they are put in, and depending on where it is, they're put in a boiler suit, and they're given a number. The number is on the back of the suit. They would be put in a dorm. Depending on the size of the dorm, there could be 12, 20 inside in the dorm. They are dragged out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, taken out for an hour's PT, and they are not to talk, they're not to look sideways, they look straight ahead, and they only speak when they're spoken to by an officer.
And, I mean, a boot camp to me sounds like a harsh regime, sounds like something that nobody wants to end up in. What sort of a regime, what sort of a life do you lead in a boot camp?
Right, as I say, you're dragged out of bed in the morning, you go and get your breakfast, you then go, you make up your bunk, they sleep in bunks. Mm-hmm. The bunks are made down in a military style. We go in, we inspect the bunks. If the bunks are not up to standard, they get punished. And the punishment can be anything from extra PT up to missing a visit. And if there's ever a gross kind of act, i.e. they backchat an officer or they're fighting or anything like that, they can be put in solitary. And the solitary can range from 12 hours to 24 hours. And they are then brought out, they're put in front of the senior officer. The senior officer gives them a verbal warning that it's never to happen again. If it happens again, then more severe measures. Okay,
now I've just gotten a message in from somebody saying, putting a 9-year-old through a boot camp is wrong on every level. I don't care what anyone says.
Okay, right. Well, I will give you obviously I'm not going to mention names, I'm going to mention the case, but going back, that 9-year-old put a gun to a woman's head at a traffic light and killed her. Now, you explain to me why he shouldn't have been put in a boot camp. He's lucky he didn't get the death sentence, to be honest.
Okay, so when it comes to you're obviously Irish, you're back living here in Ireland.
Yes, I am, yeah.
You believe that we are too soft on juvenile offenders, do you?
Absolutely. Listen, there's no question about it. They're laughing at the courts. They're laughing at the Gardaí in this country. God help them. I wouldn't want their job. As these kids know what their rights are, what they're entitled to, and they know if they go to court, some barrister or liberal solicitor's going to stand up and spout this out, dribble out of them about, they're from a deprived background, their parents drink, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, but no. We need to get harder here. We need to get harsh. If I had my way and had the money, Adrian, I'd open up boot camps around here. I really would.
Tell me what a typical day would be like for a 14-year-old who was locked up for antisocial behaviour. What would his day consist of?
Well, his day would consist of, he would come into the reception area. Any thing he had on him, like watches, phone, iPad, anything he had, like any digital, any type of thing like that, money, bracelets, whatever, necklace, would all be taken from him. Mm-hmm. His clothes would be taken from him. He would be showered. He'd have a medical examination. He would be put in a boiler suit. He would be given not a name, but he could be A25, A24, A27, and that would be on the back of his suit.
And is that what he would be known as?
That's what he would be known as, yes.
Right.
Right? So what we do then is we show them, we bring them in. This is the regime within the dorm here. This is the time you will be getting up. This is the time you will be doing your PE. This is the time you'll have your breakfast. And all at those times, you do not look sideways. You do not talk unless you are spoken to. Then, during the day, you will have your lunch, which is silent. There's no speaking then. In the afternoon, we give them what we call a relaxation session where they can have a game of basketball or a game of football, whatever they want. Mm-hmm. They are allowed to speak then or shout, do whatever they want to do. But we will not tolerate anybody losing their temper, anybody fighting, anybody being aggressive to anybody else. Nobody answers an officer back. What an officer says is law. And what happens?
What happens if I do answer an officer back?
Well, what happens is you are put on a charge. You're brought in front of the senior officer who runs that particular wing, and there is a number of punishments that can be handed out. One is you can lose your sports time in the afternoon for maybe a week, or you're put on extra duties where you're sweeping the yards, you're polishing the floors, you're cleaning out the toilets, like that, Adrian.
Okay, it sounds fairly... I mean, here in Ireland, that would sound harsh as an adult prison regime, let alone one for children.
Yeah, but you see, Adrian, these people need to be shown that the way they're carrying on, the way they're conducting themselves is not acceptable. They have to have respect. And what we try and... sorry, Adrian. What we try and do is we tear them down and then we build them up again. So they have respect for themselves, respect for the people in charge. They go through various courses while they're in there as well. If they want to better their education, they can do education courses. They can do hands-on courses like woodwork, metalwork. They can study IT. They could do sports. So
it's all in their hands.
It's all in their hands, in a sense.
One of the biggest problems we have with our prison system here in Ireland, and even our juvenile detention system, is, for example, a lot of people believe that to lock away a young person is just putting them into a training course on how to be a good criminal. That they learn from their peers, how to break the law, basically. Is that a risk? Is that, in other words, what percentage of people released from a juvenile boot camp end up being reoffenders?
When I worked there, Adrian, the percentage was 3 out of every 10.
So 30% would reoffend.
30%.
But that means 70% don't.
Don't. And a lot of these young people or older people either go back to education, they get themselves, we would help them get a job or to go on to further education or to take up some kind of training that they want to do. A lot of them, the older guys, would go in and do social work and work. The older guys in there would kind of befriend the younger guys and say, look where I am now. Look at what I've done. Do you want to be here like me? You're already here. Are you going to come back here again? Like they lay it down and they say, when I leave here now, when I'm 18, I'm going into the main prison system. And like, you can scare the hell out of these young fellas, And sometimes, Adrian, that's what you have to do.
Okay, and in terms of the way they're treated, I mean, I'm listening to you describe the way they're treated. You never talk back to an officer and all of that, yeah? And that's all fine. Is there any physical abuse of any sort?
Oh, God, no. No. The only time they would be restrained in any manner is if they attacked an officer or if they attacked another guy there, So, But then, even then, to be honest with you, Adrian, it would be minimal force.
Right, okay.
Just enough to say stop,
I want to just cut across you for 1 second and ask our listeners a simple question. Listening to the way Joseph has described the juvenile detention centre or the boot camp that he worked in the States, would you like to see similar facilities here in Ireland? All I want you to do is text the word yes or the word no to 0877 98 98 98. You've just listened to the way he has described the boot camp that he worked in the States. Would you like to see a similar juvenile detention regime here in Ireland? And basically what he has said is that they set about to, not to scare them, but to teach them that you have to have respect. And that's really the ultimate goal in the sort of strict regime, Joseph, yeah?
Listen, Adrian, if they have that and they have respect for themselves, they'll have respect for other people.
So the aim of the game in treating these juvenile offenders in such a harsh way is that they will leave having earned or gained respect or developed respect.
Absolutely. We will have built them up and they will say, hey, what I was doing, we make them recognise that the action they were doing and the way that they were conducting themselves is not acceptable. And when they leave us, they know that it's not acceptable. Yeah, there are those who fail and come back again and they're put through the same thing again because they know they come back to us at 17 depending on the sentence they get. When they hit 18, they're into the main prison system and that's a different story completely.
Yes, of course. So it's to try and convince them that they need to... Okay, stay there for 1 second. Once again, our text number... I want you to vote on this question. Listening to the way in which Joseph has just described the juvenile detention centre that he worked in the States, would you support the introduction of a similar harsh regime detention centre here in Ireland for juvenile offenders? All I want you to do is text the word yes or the word no to 0877 98 98 98. Simple question. Okay? It's a simple question. Just text yes or no to 0877 98 98 98. Would you support the introduction of harsh regime juvenile detention centres here in Ireland? As Joseph has described about the place that he worked in the States. Text yes or no to 0877 98 98 98. Get your text into me in the next 2 minutes if you can. And by the way, if you're for most of you, your texts are included in your mobile phone package, so it won't cost your washer to send us a text. Just text yes or no to 0877 98 98 98. Would you support the introduction of harsh regime juvenile detention centres here in Ireland as has been described by Joseph? He said that 70% are not do not reoffend, 30% do and end up in the prison, in the adult prison population. Do you believe, Joseph, that the harsh regime detention centres that you describe are a success? Do they work? Do they achieve their aim to get these young people on the straight and narrow?
Absolutely, no question.
No question?
No question about it, no.
And what is the difference then in the way we treat juvenile offenders here in Ireland, in your opinion?
Adrian, most of the juvenile offenders here are treated... Look, they know that there's no deterrent there. The guards are doing their job. They're bringing them to court. They're bringing them to the children's court. You get lawyers standing up giving sob stories. Yeah, there are kids out there, and we must understand this too, who have psychological and mental problems.
Correct.
That is a different story. Okay, they need a different, as you and I know, they need a different type of help. Okay? Mm-hmm. The problem is, too, the mental health services in this country here is rock bottom. There's nothing there to help these kids. But the ones who are deliberately going out, running with gangs, creating antisocial behaviour, destroying people's lives, Adrian, stick them in a boot camp. take ex-forces personnel from here, people who have trained recruits, people who run army courses and training courses, get them in there. And roar in their faces. Tell them that they can't talk back. We're not going to accept you talking back. You talk back, there's going to be a consequence for it. Because they think they can do what they like, Adrian, and there's people's lives that they're being destroyed by the way that they're carrying on. And it shouldn't happen. The law doesn't work and the courts don't work.
And you believe that harsh regime, juvenile detention centres do have an effect, do make young people go, holy God, I have to get my act together here. Yeah, and as I had one young guy say to me, he said, I cannot wait to get out of here and I'll never come back. I said, well, that's the whole aim of this camp. But I said, it's down to you, not to me. I will impose the regime in this camp on everybody, across the board. I don't care who you are, who you think you are, or what you think you are. But it's down to you. One of the fears I think that people have, because of our history here in Ireland, because of our, the way in which young people were treated in the past in this country, is a fear that young people in facilities like this would be abused, either sexually or physically. Is that something that we would need to be concerned about? To be honest with you, Adrian, the type of people who work in these facilities would need to be Garda vetted. They would need to have a good background from the Defence Forces. You would have to have people in there that, that are employed by the centre, like counsellors and so on, that if they have an issue, they have a problem, they don't have to talk to an officer. They can go to a person not directly connected with the regime, and they can talk the problem out with them. I'm not talking about bringing kids in and torturing them or, physically abusing them. No, I don't agree with that. But you do understand people's fear for young people because of the history that we have about... I do, Adrian, I do, but at the same time there has to be a line drawn in the sand that this behaviour is not acceptable and that there will be consequences for it. You'll be very interested to hear the results of our poll. Yes, please. One of the highest volume polls we've had in a long time, I have to tell you. Yeah. The question that I asked was... would you support the introduction of harsh regime juvenile detention centres here in Ireland as described by yourself? Mm-hmm. And here is the result. 90%, 90%, said yes, they would support it. There you go. I 90%. Rest my case. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I rest my case, Adrian, because people are sick and tired. The guards are sick and tired. Let's be honest about it. Society is sick and tired of this carry on and the excuses. Adrian, look, boot camps are needed here and they're needed now, okay? Don't mind these regimes where they're putting them in and they're giving them Xboxes and they're giving them TV sets and, games and all. Forget it. That doesn't happen in boot camp. Anything you get in boot camp, you earn. And it can be taken away just exactly the same way. Mm. At the end of the day, it's on them. It's the way they conduct themselves, the way they behave themselves. They can go along, get through the system and come out as better people. You can buck the system, but by God, you will pay. It's been fascinating talking to you, Joseph. 90% of our listeners in a huge volume poll support this idea, and maybe it's something that we need to have this conversation. Fascinating, Joseph. Thanks very much indeed for talking to me. Adrian, thank you very much for giving me the time. Thanks a million. Bye-bye. This is 98FM's Dublin Talks.
The voice of the city.
98FM's Dublin Talks.
With Adrian Kennedy.
We're live every morning from 10 on 98FM.